Hey guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, the Bright Side girl, and today we're doing a really large reading wrap-up. A couple of house cleaning notes, if you will. A couple of things happened. In May, I did my wrap-up for Hikeathon, which was the readathon that I hosted that month, and I had read the books for the second half of May, but because the readathon was still fresh, I wanted to get my separate reading wrap-up for that up very soon. Because I had read a ton of books. I didn't want to do like a giant May reading wrap up. And I was like, I'll just do the first part of May after this. And I filmed it and everything. And then I just never posted it. I completely forgot about it. I don't know what happened. So you're about to see that here really soon and be like way in the past. I like to wait until the end of the month to film my reading wrap-ups. So for my June reading wrap-up, which normally would have been out around the first part of July, didn't happen because one, we were doing Mermaid Marathon and I was all in. I was like posting stories on Instagram and talking to people and reading a bunch and doing mermaidy activities. It was a blast. I will link the vlog up here in the cards for you guys. And then in the middle of the month, we wound up having to take a trip home to Kansas City kind of unexpectedly, and things were just kind of unorganized. So I never filmed a June reading wrap up. And now it is the end of July. So what we're gonna do, once I'm done talking here, you're going to see my May reading wrap up that I had already filmed like 6 weeks ago. So I'll post that after I'm done talking. And then after that, you're gonna come back here, see me again right now, and I will talk about the books that I read for June and July and be caught up with wrap-ups because I read some really great things. Better late than never. I'm going to be posting more regularly from here on out because I have a lot of things planned for the holidays and stuff, especially. I'll do slightly less for August, but then once September hits, you're going to be getting all the fall Halloween vibes. We're going to be doing some non-bookish content, all kinds of jazz. So if you're interested to see what I read for the last 3 months, stay tuned. And for now, check out what I read in May. Hey guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, the Bright Side girl, and today we are doing my May reading wrap up. So this video is coming up a little bit late and it's coming up before my other May wrap up, which I'll talk about in a second. These are basically all the books that I read for the first part of May, so the 1st through the 17th. Almost all of them were audiobooks, so I will list the narrators right here for you guys so you can go and check them out because some of them were really great. Then I did read 1 or 2 physical books. For the second half of May, I did Hikeathon, which was a fitness and nature themed readathon, and I read so many books during that I did a separate wrap up, which is already up. I put it up first. Since the readathon ended, I wanted to get it up kind of in a timely manner. So I will link that wrap up here in the cards if you guys want to see the books that I read for the last half of May. But for now, we're going to talk about the books that I read for the first half. The first up is Sleeping Giants. This is book 1 in an adult sci-fi series. And the premise is basically a little girl is like wandering or riding her bike and she falls into this big hole and it winds up being the shape of a hand, and they find this big robot hand in it, and then this whole thing comes about where did this robot hand come from? What is it? Is it aliens? Is it something else? And so we're basically like 10 years after this happened, and we're kind of following all the information that we're gathering at this time about this robot hand and other kinds of things. So it's very, very sci-fi, and it is fantastic. This was a reread for me. I reread it with my husband Jeff via audiobook, full cast audios. Absolutely fantastic, told mostly in like dialogue, chat log type situations, similar to Illuminae, but it doesn't have all the other stuff that Illuminae has, so you don't have to have the physical book. Illuminae has like a bunch of drawings, different types of texts and things that are really visually fun, but this one is just like one person speaks and then the other person speaks. So for audio, it's fabulous because there's different narrators. They all do an amazing job, and my husband really enjoyed it. I loved rereading it. This was one of my favorite books of 2020. It helped get me through the first part of 2020, which we all needed help with. And it's just really fun and fabulous, smartly written, like the science and the way that they do everything was really cool. It is adult, but I feel like it's still kind of appropriate for YA and not too over the top with the sci-fi things. It's very easy to follow and understand, and the characters are all like likable and unlikable at the same time. And so upon rereading, I gave this 5 stars. Then I read Hitched by G.K. DeRosa, the One. This is the final book in a weird series that I started. This series is kind of one of those series where like all the books come out within a few months of each other and they're all really short. So I did this on audio. Narrator's not my favorite. Honestly, this series is kind of a pass in my opinion. I liked the first two just because it was something fun and different. So the premise behind this is basically this girl from the Midwest gets picked to be like basically like the Bachelorette or a new TV show, and they fly her to this island and they're gonna film everything there, and then when she gets there she finds out that all of the men are supernatural, so they're like werewolves or dragons or shapeshifters or vampires, and she learns like all about this kind of stuff, and they're gonna like reveal this to the world. I don't remember if people kind of know that there are supernatural men or not, but that's the premise of it, and I thought that was great. I love like, I don't know, I love it where people have to like date multiple people to like find the right one. I really like watching The Bachelor, so that's probably where that comes from. So I started this series last year and I really enjoyed book 1 and 2. They're very simple and like over the top and kind of angsty and dramatic and like not super spectacular on the writing, and just, you know, like a really fun palate cleanser type read. But I did not really enjoy this last one. I don't know if it's just because it was like the ending and I missed like the different characters kind of all interacting and stuff. I didn't really like the wrap up that much either. So I don't know, if it sounds fun to you, go ahead and try it, but they're really short audiobooks. It only takes me like 2 hours to get through them because I listen at a faster speed. But I finished a series, so I'm very proud of myself because that is my main like theme for this year. Then I reread Escaping from Houdini by Kerri Maniscalco in preparation to read Capturing the Devil by Kerri Maniscalco and finish up this series. So I read this series 2 years ago and I just never got to this final book. I don't know why. I absolutely love this series. So the first book is Stalking Jack the Ripper, and that follows Audrey Rose, and she wants to be a forensic scientist and like study dead bodies and learn things about that, and it's set in the 1800s, so we've got like that gothic Victorianness that I absolutely love. And she's studying under her uncle, and there's all these trials with her being a woman, and then the Stalking Jack the Ripper events kind of happen, and she winds up being kind of a detective with her uncle and another boy to kind of figure out what's happening. They use their skills to kind of like solve the mystery, and then each book kind of has its own theme and its own like villain per se. So I love this series. As a whole, this series is 5 stars for me. The third book is my least favorite, but I did like it more upon rereading it. I reread it via audio and I listened to this one as well. Reading and audio, they're both phenomenal. The narrator is really good for this series, but the writing is just very fun. It's not overly dark, but the characters are so likable and you just get so attached to everything, and the writing is just so good. I can't wait to read more from Kerri Maniscalco. I can't believe I waited so long to read this. This one had a really different vibe about it than the others. It had a lot more romance than I was expecting, and there were a couple of plots that were kind of unnecessary, I thought, but I still just love the characters so much, and I really loved the ending. So I wound up giving this one, I think, like 4.5 stars overall, and I really liked getting that extra romancy thing that we didn't get quite as much of in the other 3 books. So yeah, I'm really excited to finish another series, and I literally still miss these characters because I loved it so much. Then I physically read The Stars We Steal by Alexa Dawn. I actually started this one for Galaxy-a-thon, which was my space and sci-fi themed readathon that I did in the end of April, and I finished it in the first part of May. I really enjoyed this. So this kind of has that Bachelorette style thing as well. Everyone is in space on spaceships. I don't know, like the Earth has like gone away. And our main character is with her family who like used to be wealthy, but now they're kind of down on their luck. And there is this whole thing that happens where a lot of the younger kids will join this like, gosh, I can't remember the name of it, but this like dating ceremony where they put them all on like blind dates with different people all the time, and it's like this whole like few week-long thing to like find a match. It's kind of like a royalty-esque type thing. So she had like different suitors and things in here, and she also is an inventor, and she's invented something to kind of help her family so that maybe she doesn't have to do this like matching suitor thing, like save them from financial ruin. And I really enjoyed it. I liked the first half more than the second half, and I did enjoy the characters quite a bit. Overall, it was probably like a 3.5, almost 4 star for me. I really liked the different elements of the spaceship. You're set on a spaceship the entire time. You get to hear about all the different things that they have to do. Like they have like a pool on the spaceship, and they can change rooms to look certain ways. There's some political drama in here and some fun things. So overall, I thought it was a really fun read, and I don't really hear a lot of people talking about it. So if you like spacey sci-fi but also romancy reads, I would definitely check this out. Then I listened to Stepsister by Jennifer Donnelly. Actually, Buddy read this one with my friend JJ. I don't think she finished it. I think she wound up DNFing it. This one has way more of a middle grade vibe than it does YA. I know it's listed as YA, but the writing style and like the moral aspects and all kinds of things is way more middle grade, which the only bad thing about that is that's not what I was expecting. I actually really enjoy middle grade, and I wound up really liking this and enjoying it quite a bit. So basically this is following one of the stepsisters from Cinderella and her life and like how she came to be the way she was. And there is a lot about just being kind to each other and loving each other and what hate and harmful things can do to young impressionable girls and just young people in general. And it's about like finding your voice and finding who you are. It's definitely a coming of age story. There's like battles in here and war and romance, and it's very complex, and I really enjoyed it. Like overall it was a little bit slow and I just wasn't sure what to expect at first, but I do recommend this one. Just keep in mind it does have that middle grade vibe, kind of like her other series, Deep Blue, which is her mermaid series that I also enjoyed, but it does have like just a younger feel to it. So then I listened to Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer. This is Marissa Meyer's newest book, and it is a contemporary, and so I was really excited to get to it because Marissa Meyer is currently my favorite author as far as I like pretty much everything that she writes, and it's just very fun and her characters are very lovable. This is a contemporary book with like a little bit of magical surrealism. The main character in this book is very judgy and snarky and is easily annoyed by things. She has a school assignment with this boy that she was assigned with, and he's kind of slacking off and not really like helping out, and she's very frustrated with this, and he's frustrated with her for being so over the top. And she winds up one day realizing that she can cast instant karma by what she's like thinking and feeling. Like she'll be in line at a store and someone will be doing something she doesn't like and that she thinks is morally wrong basically, and instant karma happens to them and something bad will happen to them. And so it's not something that she's like purposefully doing, but she kind of realizes it's happening. So that's like part of the plot. I wouldn't say it was the main part. I was kind of expecting it to be more heavily a part of it. And then she winds up having to redo the assignment with the boy that she's frustrated with. And so there's like romance and love-hate romance in there. This is getting quite a few mixed reviews. I understand why. It's incredibly long. The main character is very, very annoying in the beginning. She is just so judgmental and rude, and even though she's frustrated with people for doing things, she has very little grace or like understanding of what other people might be going through. And so that's kind of the point of the story, is to her kind of learn some balance. I liked it just because I like Marissa Meyer. It was a good audiobook. I think this might be a little bit brutal to physically read because it's so long for a contemporary. We do get some nice like oceany vibes in here because they're in a seaside town in California, and there's a lot to do with like helping the wildlife, so like taking care of seals and stuff like that, and environmental causes. And so I enjoyed it, but it was probably only like a 3-star read for me. It was like fun, but I don't know if I'll ever like reread it just because it was so long in some parts and the first part was so annoying. But Rebecca Soler did a great job narrating. She's one of my favorites. She does all of Marissa Meyer's books. So I don't know, if you love Marissa Meyer and you like good romance, just hang in there through that beginning part because it's pretty rough. I enjoyed it overall. Then lastly, I listened to Ember Queen by Laura Sebastian. This is the 3rd book in the Ash Princess series, which I finally finished. I listened to Ash Princess last year for a book club that I was in, and then I read Lady Smoke last month, and then I read Ember Queen this month. So this is following a princess whose mother was killed in front of her, and her throne was like taken over. She's kind of kept as like almost like a pet, and they kind of treat her well as far as like they keep her in fancy dresses and kind of talk to her a certain way, but then they also like tease her and make fun of her and kind of verbally abuse her and kind of let her know that she's basically their slave. And then one day she gets the chance to take back, when she's older, she gets the chance to kind of take back her throne. So that's the premise of the whole series. There's some like jewel stone magic in here that is really neat. There is a fabulous romance. Like, my heart. And I loved this entire series. I think they were all between like 4 to 5 stars for me. I think I'm giving this one like 4.5. It was just a hair too long, but I loved the narrator as well. She does an amazing job, and I was so excited to enjoy like a fantasy series so much. I love fantasy, but this was just a really well, thoroughly built world, and we had some good political intrigue and some good war aspects, and I really like Princess Theo is such a good protagonist. I really just thought she was like a strong, powerful, yet balanced and emotional person, and I don't know, I just really loved it, and I would highly recommend checking out this series. So that is all that I listened to and read for the first part of May. Let me know if you guys read any of these down below in the comments and if you enjoyed any of them. Okay, now that that's done, we can talk about what I read for June and July. I'm gonna kind of intermix some things here. As some of you may know, I have been trying to finish some series before the end of the year, and so a lot of these I read the same books in the series for June and July. So if I finish the series, we'll just talk about it. So I read the Jacoby series. I finished up with Beastly Bones and Ghostly Echoes, I think was the last one. Something like that. The 3rd and 4th book in June and July. This is a Victorian Gothic magical detective type series. It has a Sherlock vibe, but we've got like a female Watson, and our like Sherlock-esque character can see magical creatures and beings, and he's the only one that can see them. So he solves these mysteries that nobody else can solve because they can't see that there's like a pixie breaking their window or like a dragon eating their garden. And I thought it was really fabulous. The narrator for this one was Nicola Barber, because I listened to them on audio. I love her. She does the Jacoby series. I actually listened to several things from her recently. She has a beautiful British accent. It has all those good Victorian Gothic Englishy just wonderful vibes. It would be the perfect book for fall, book series for fall and Halloween. So I'll be talking about these probably a couple more times in the future, but I think I gave the 3rd book 3.5 stars, and I gave the last one 4 stars. So overall the series was like a 4-star read for me. Super enjoyable, very quick, and very fun. Then to kind of get ready for Mermaid Marathon, which was my mermaid themed readathon, I finished Tidal by Amanda Hocking, which is the 3rd book in the Water Song Quartet. I read the first 2 of these last year for Mermaid Marathon, the audiobook, but unfortunately they never made audiobooks for the last 2, so I just physically read it. This series has a lot of mixed reviews. I understand why. It has a lot of like cattiness and high schooly vibe, which doesn't always work for me, but in this one it did. I just really enjoyed it, but I super love a good mermaid book. The plot for this series is we have 2 sisters and we're following their lives. They live kind of in like a seaside town, and one of the sisters winds up finding out or turning into a mermaid, and they're kind of trying to like stop it and also like keep her from being a mermaid, because the mermaids, siren-y girls that they know, are terrible and they kill people and they're violent and vicious, and they're very like Mean Girl style but with like that siren vibe. They can control in particular men and different people. They can also turn into like the original form of sirens, which is like bird creatures, like some of them can turn into birds. So it's got a lot of Greek mythology tied in here. I just really enjoyed it. There is like some annoying Mean Girl cattiness, which isn't the best, but we get a lot of stuff from their past in this one. So about how the original girls became mermaids, some myth and lore around that, and trying to solve the mystery. So I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit, and it was a little bit darker, more intense, and it had like a fight scene in it that I wasn't expecting. I especially liked the ending. I know a lot of people didn't even get to this book, so if you really love mermaids, I would check them out. I just think they're really easy, quick reads. So I wound up giving this one, I think, 3.5 stars. Next up is Shadow Song by S.J. Jones. This is a duology that I wrapped up in June. I read Winter Song in January and actually reread Winter Song via audiobook somewhat recently, I think in May, and I absolutely loved the first book. It was absolutely fabulous. It has a labyrinth, Goblin King type storyline, almost like Hades and Persephone. We have our main character and her sister gets stolen into like the dark underworld. I can't remember what it's called. It's like the underground, but it's not like hell. It's just like a fairy world almost. And there's a Goblin King, and our main character has to go and like save her sister from the Goblin King. It is very flowery, very poetic, beautifully written. I super enjoyed physically reading it. Like, it's a 5-star read for me, the first one, and I reread it, which I haven't done with any other book this year. It's going to be in my top 10 for sure. It has a lot of romance, and it's like angsty and fairy-esque, and it's kind of Cruel Princey, but even more dramatic, and I just thought it was absolutely fabulous. I will say that when I reread it via audio, I still enjoyed it because I loved the story, but the narrator took that flowery, intense, angsty writing like way over the top, at least compared to how it was in my brain. So it felt like overly dramatic on audiobook. So I wouldn't suggest doing the audio. I liked physically reading it a lot better, which isn't usually the case. She was a good narrator, but I just felt like she made it like, I don't know, too much. So I finally read the second one in the duology. Unfortunately, I didn't love this one quite as much. Honestly, it felt like a different story to me. We have a lot of the same characters, but we're not getting a lot of the aspects that I loved about the first one. The romance wasn't as much there, and it was following some different storylines that were really interesting, and I probably would have liked them more if it was like a separate series. So I still really enjoyed it because I wanted to see what happened, but I didn't love it quite as much, so I only gave this one 3.5 stars. Again, I listened to this on audio, so that might have been part of it, but I think the first one was just so much better. Next up, I read Newt's Emerald by Garth Nix. This is actually my first Garth Nix book. It is, I think it is a middle grade series, but she seemed like a YA age. If not, it definitely reads like a middle grade. It's a standalone. It is about a young girl, and she has this like magical legacy. They have this powerful emerald that she's supposed to inherit upon, I think, someone's death, and it gets stolen. And she basically goes off on an adventure and has to like dress up and pretend to be a man to figure out like who stole the emerald and why and what it actually does, and kind of find herself. It was a very fun, fast-paced, enjoyable middle grade. It was a nice little breather in between all the series that I've been reading. I think I wound up giving it like 3.5 stars. Not like an absolute favorite, but it was really fun, and if you enjoy a good middle grade style fantasy, I do think she is like an older teenager, but I just read very much like a middle grade. So I would recommend checking this one out if you're interested and you enjoy those like a little bit younger feeling books. And then lastly for June, I read Wicked by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Earlier this year, I had asked one of my good friends, Brittany, to send me a list of 5 of her favorite books that she thinks that I will like, and I did the same for her. I didn't really have any intention behind it. I like briefly thought about doing a video of it, but I didn't want to add like any more to my plate, so I just kind of wanted to have those as something fun in the back of my mind. So this was the first one I picked because I read like half of a different Jennifer L. Armentrout book last fall, which it was kind of a weird choice, so we won't go there now. So this is a fairy series. Don't be confused by the covers, because originally when I bought these before talking to anybody, I thought they were mermaid books or water fairies or something, because they're all like in the water and very magical, but no, they're just this way for pretty much no reason, which isn't my favorite. The covers are still beautiful, but they just don't have anything to do with the book, which, you know, that's a choice. I unfortunately really did not enjoy this book almost at all. This is a new adult Faye style series. It's set in New Orleans, which I enjoyed the New Orleans aspect of it, and I enjoyed that our character was a little bit older, but this one definitely is more of a like smutty romance book, which I was not expecting. I feel like if I'd known that going in, I may have had a better time with it, but there was just a lot of sexual innuendos. There weren't actually like a ton of like actual sex scenes, but there was just a lot of like heavy-handedness with the innuendos and people like wanting to do things and all kinds of stuff. And so I personally felt like that kind of took away from the story, but I didn't go into it for that part of it. So I feel like if you like those style of books, then you might enjoy this. I personally just didn't enjoy this particular one. So it also, a lot of the characters like in the beginning were cussing a lot, which I'm not against cussing in books. I just want it to feel like it has a purpose or like it's that character's personality. But when like all the characters were doing it, it just felt like kind of like a, I don't know, like a lazy author choice. And so I just personally didn't enjoy the writing style of this book. The background story on the fairies and the world and things like that was cool, but it was so minimal to me, like everything else overshadowed it. And so I didn't enjoy it enough to continue on with the next book in the series, unfortunately. But I will try some other Jennifer L. Armentrout books because I have quite a few of them on my TBR. So I wound up giving this one like 2.5 stars. Then we did Mermaid Marathon for the first part of July, very end of June. I will link, like I said, I'll link my vlog up here. You guys can go and check it out. It's my main readathon where we read mermaid, ocean piratey themed books, and I had an absolute blast. Did not read as much as I was wanting to, but I was just doing a lot of things new for the first time, like I said, with like Instagram and giveaways and stuff, and so I was kind of getting pulled in different directions and not the best organized, but I still did fairly good. So I think I read 4 books total for that. So the first book that I wound up reading was Fable by Adrienne Young. This is a young adult pirate duology. I still need to read the second book. Main character Fable, when she's younger, gets left on the island by her, like, I think her dad's a pirate, but I'm not sure. Her dad, and she gets left on this island and she kind of has to like find her own way, and when she gets older she wants to leave the island and go and find him and kind of have her own adventures. It's a very short description of it, but that was enough for me, and this was the swashbuckling adventure that I wanted. It had such a good ocean-y, piratey feel to it. Fable was such a fun character. I super enjoyed the romance part of it and just like the badassery of the girls and the guys. There was some mystery in here and I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to read the next one. So I wound up giving this one 4 stars. I listened to an audio. I super enjoyed the narrator, but I have the second one like queued up and ready to go because I super enjoyed it, and I think they're actually coming out with a standalone in this world that's maybe following different characters coming out next year or the end of the year, something like that. So I'm really excited to check out more from Adrienne Young as well. I read The Mermaid Song by Stacey Claflin. This was just a quick little audiobook that I picked up because I just saw it on Hoopla and it was like 5 hours, so I could get through it really quickly. And I didn't enjoy this one, unfortunately, which tends to kind of happen with things you haven't heard a ton about sometimes. It was just very high school-y, basic writing, a little bit slow, boring, a little bit catty, like not in a way that I liked. I just kind of felt myself like not really caring. However, the ending of this story was very good. So the plot of this one is our main character is from a family of mermaids living on land, and they wind up having to go back to their mer kingdom in the sea because someone who was on the throne died and her dad has to take over as the next heir. I think that's what happens, which is a really cool concept. So she winds up coming to the sea, I think for the first time, and like having to go to like mermaid high school, but there wasn't enough aspects. I wanted like more aspects of that. I felt like eventually the book just kind of felt like a normal high school book and not like a mermaidy high school book, which I'm not sure you could pull it off without being too cheesy, but it just kind of felt more like a contemporary. However, the ending was super surprising and different than anything I had read. Something happened that I was like, what? So I may still check out the next one because they're so short. I did wind up giving this one, I think, like 2.5 stars, so not my favorite. But I might still check out that next one just because that ending was really good, and maybe it'll kind of pick up from here. Then I listened to Forgive My Fins on audio by Tara Lynn's Child. I read this one like 3 years ago when I was kind of doing my own personal mermaid marathon. This one has a very heavy middle grade feel as well, but it is considered young adult. It just feels like a much younger young adult. Our main character is a mermaid princess and she is living on land. She decides that she wants to be like in the human world, and then something happens and they want her to come back into her mer kingdom. Unlike Mermaid Song, this has a lot of interesting things about the underworld and the mer kingdom and the mer people. I think it's very funny. It definitely has a young vibe, and I always want to caution people about that. It's very cheesy, but there's just something about it that's lovable, and the main love interest is just so adorable. I just find it like so sweet and heartwarming and so interesting, and the books continue to get better. So if you don't mind a little younger, cheesier vibe, which I think we could all use every now and then, highly recommend. I give this first one 4 stars upon rereading. Then I read The Mermaid's Child by Jo Baker. This one was narrated by Nicola Barber. This was actually the last one that I read for Mermaid Marathon, but I don't want to talk about it because it was like almost my least favorite. This one is one of those where it's like, looks like a mermaid book and the synopsis kind of leads you to think that, but it's not really, there's not really what you're wanting out of it. So this one hits more like a tough read. You're following our main character. Gosh, I can't remember any of these people's names, so sorry about that. Our main character starts out, she's like an orphan and she's sold to like clean pubs or something like that. And she basically, you're just following this poor orphan girl's life, and she's convinced like her mom was a mermaid and her dad was like a fairy, and she talks about that like a lot, but you're not really sure if it's an analogy or if there's some actual magic in there. And so that is what kind of kept me listening to it. But she just goes from like one abusive situation to the next, like trigger warnings for everything in here. And it was very dark. This is very adult, super, super dark, but not in like a fun, gothic, intense way. It's more just in like a sad, heart-wrenching way, and I just really did not enjoy it. I didn't see the point of it. The ending I felt like it was completely pointless, and I think I wound up giving this one, again, 2 stars. The writing was well done, but the actual story, I just didn't see the point. You were just following this girl's terrible life, and nothing that amazing ever came to be. So, unfortunately. The last book that I read was Songs from the Deep by Kelly Powell, again on audiobook. I believe the narrator was Karissa Vacker, who is fantastic. She's quickly becoming a new favorite narrator. I just finished another book from her that I'll talk about here soon. This one's set on an island that is surrounded by like sirens. They're basically just like they talk about them like they're like seals down by the water. They're like, don't go by the sirens or you could get killed. And so there's like this magic kind of like around it, but it's also considered normal. So everyone's kind of careful around the sirens, and they have these rules and things in place. And then a young boy gets killed, and they believe that the sirens killed him, and they don't know why, because they had kind of like a pact with them or something like that. And our main character is convinced that it wasn't the sirens, that it was an actual murder, and so she's trying to like solve this mystery and this murder. She plays violin, and she is kind of fascinated by the sirens, and she is a violin teacher, and the kid was her student. And so it's kind of like this cool murder mystery islandy vibe. Not as much about mermaids as some of the other books that I really like. It's kind of just in the background. It's more of like this dark, enchanting like murder mystery with some romance, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was like slightly suspenseful and just like eerie and really, really cool. It just had like a, I don't know, it was just really cool. And the ending was really nice as well. I really enjoyed this one. So with the experience and all of that stuff, I wound up giving this one 4 stars. So that was everything that I listened to for Mermaid Marathon. I read half of The Maiden Ship, and then I finished this after the readathon. So this is by Michelle Reichman. I had seen this on Instagram and also in my, I have like a young adult swap group on Facebook, and this was like all the rage because Fairy Loot did a hardback version that was gorgeous. She normally does her own cover art. I think she was injured when this book came out, so there's someone else that did it, but it's very similar. And this book was just so beautiful. I had such good luck with Mermaid Moon last year being a beautiful mermaid book that I bought on a whim, that I went ahead and bought this one. Technically not mermaids yet, but I think they're in the second book. I think it's going to be 3 books overall. So this one we're following Dane Alloway. He has been on this maiden ship, basically living like a sailor life with his dad, and when he turns 18, one day a mysterious maiden appears in his cabin that changes everything and sets him on this new voyage. And there's so much great stuff in here. There's romance, and there is magic, and there is lore, and there are badass like piratey type girls and great villains and monsters, and it was so good. It was really good. I highly recommend it. I think I wound up giving this like 4 or 4.5 stars. It felt a tiny bit slow in the middle, but overall it was really fabulous, and it was kind of everything that I was wanting. And I think the next one, I need to get it ASAP, is going to be even better. So let me know if you guys have heard of this one down below in the comments. Lastly, I've only read one thing since Mermaid Marathon, so in like 2.5 weeks. I just kind of took a break because I was just doing a lot and just a lot was happening. But I read Beneath the Haunting Sea by Joanna Ruth Meyer on audiobook. This one's narrated by Karissa Vacker, again, who I just really love. And this one, again, is not about mermaids, but it has that kind of feel to it. I've been wanting to read this for so long, and I've wanted to read something from Joanna for a long time because her books always seem so magical. We have our lead character, Talia. She's destined to become an empress of her island, but there is an ambitious rival, treacherous girl that seizes power and forces her and her mother to basically be banished to the Northern Sea. And when she finally gets to her destination, she discovers like all of these secrets involving her island and the world in general, and things about her mother. And it is so complex and beautiful and so fairy tale-esque. You get a lot of history about the world told like in every other chapter. They'll tell like a fairy tale based in her world, which I really loved. There is a great romance in here. We have just some really interesting characters. It's dark, a little bit spooky, like not scary, but just a little bit eerie. And I just thought it was great, and it ended so fabulous. It was very, very fairy tale inspired and magical. So if you love that kind of thing, I'd highly recommend checking this one out. Again, 4 stars. Okay, you guys, that is everything that I read for May, June, and July. I'm sorry this video is super long. I will be timely from here on out, and I have some other videos coming soon. Be sure and follow me on Instagram for more updates on what I'm reading and just other fun bookish and non-bookish things. And I will see you guys next time on The Bright Side.